All right. So before I sort of give a little bit of my passionate spiel on one topic that I'm very passionate about, and I may have touched up on this a while back, but we're going to do it a little more practical today. I want us to do two things. So one, we'll talk a little bit about some of the most up-to-date news. But second, I think because it's pretty clear that an acute COVID is rapidly winding down, I think in the next month or so, basically, I think we're going to start gradually, or not so gradually, shifting to what we're going to call a post-COVID programming. And I think what we're going to concentrate mostly, we're going to concentrate on long hauler symptoms, and we're going to concentrate on topics surrounding kind of long-term COVID effects on not just those who got sick, but on everybody else. So we're still going to do some acute COVID things, of course, too. And the questions, of course, any questions would be welcome, just as before. But as you already probably sensed, we've already started, like last week was a really good example when Niall did kind of ergonomics and postural things. So we're going to keep doing more of the things like this. And we don't want to end this program, but we want to make it more real to the needs of the day, rather than, since again, maybe talking about how you manage acute COVID is going to be basically irrelevant. So with that, I'll share my screen real quick, and I'm sure those of you who kind of following news already seen this. So pretty much at this point, almost all the deaths in US are in exclusively unvaccinated populations. So we kind of would have expected this, but I think having this update is quite good, knowing that practically speaking, vaccine efficacies stay nearly 100% as discussed before. So good news. Also, those of us also, who still concerned about the acute illness should feel really good that if you're already vaccinated, that your risk practically is really low. So that my only update. I'll take a pause and see if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'll move into my topic. No questions. Okay, good. All right. So the question of today is, I'm going to, again, in a second, share my screen. And I'm going to ask you if, just one second. If anybody ever know who this gentleman is. All right. Okay. So you guys probably, those of you who know. So did anybody heard this name, Wim Hof? Can I see a show of hands? All right, one person. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Kind of hard for me to see the hands for some reason. Okay, there we go. So a lot of people know. So those of you who see me as patient probably already know about it, since I probably beat this topic into you multiple times. And I'm sorry about if I was a little too intrusive about it, but that's because I believe in the importance of this topic. So we're going to talk about the importance of living periodically outside of our thermal comfort zone. That's the formal terminology. So human beings have evolved over thousands of years to be capable of tolerating extreme temperatures. Unfortunately, with the modern event of all good things, including climate control, we have not been utilizing this tool sufficiently. If you look across the cultures, I'm just taking my way into this topic a little slowly. If you look at the cultures across the earth, all of the earth, every native culture had both hypo and hyperthermia processes involved. So if you look at hyperthermia, those are in Native American cultures, those would be sweat lodges. In European countries, there are different types of saunas, whether they're Finnish saunas, Russian saunas, all kinds of saunas. In other countries, in Asia, they had their own terminology for this. If you look at the opposite spectrum, at the cold temperatures, of course, the terms like polar bear plunges and all those things have been in existence as well, super low. So why is this topic so critical? Well, think of it this way. Our body, and this should be intuitive to everybody, our body has a profound innate capacity to adapt to temperature changes. Now, you may want to tell me, oh my God, but I hate cold. Every time I walk into the building or into the room, I'm always feeling cold when everybody else feeling fine. And oh my God, what do I do about it? So yeah, I want to acknowledge that a lot of us who have any inclinations of any hormonal shifts, and by the way, both my mom and my mother-in-law have huge problem with this kind of constantly feeling hot or cold depending on the shifts in ambient temperature. So I do want to acknowledge that that's a big problem. I also want to tell you that the actual most powerful solution to all these problems is not to be afraid of gradual shift toward those extreme temperatures. Now, I'm not talking about mild changes. I'm talking about being able to spend 3 to 5 minutes in a complete ice cold water, as well as spend several minutes in a tremendous heat, like a high-end saunas kind of heat. So why, let's start with the, we're gonna go to cold part of it in more depth, but let me start with the heat. So the heat does a couple of things. First of all, it activates a whole series of these proteins in our bodies called heat shock proteins. So what are they? They're our own internal mechanism of defending the cell against extreme temperatures. When you activate the those proteins expression through applying heat to the body, you have a dramatic upregulation of mitochondrial function. What's fascinating that same process happens at the low temperatures, but it happens in a very different principle. At the high temperatures, it happens through the heat shock proteins. When they begin expressing, they basically allowing a mitochondria not only to rev up its energy production, which of course is important, but it also does something critically important. It starts wiping out garbage from inside the cells. I'm not going to bog you with the whole process, how it happens, but it's actually well understood. What do I mean by that? It literally takes the gunk inside the cells that is deposited and unable to move and starts moving them. That's the whole, one of the critical aspects of heat shock proteins. They're capable of diluting garbage with molecular mechanism and removing them. Those of you who hear me as patients yelling on every corner at every one of our meetings saying detox, 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 gotta grasp that this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this constant, never-ending cellular detoxification. You're never gonna hear this from regular physicians because it doesn't, there's no script or surgery or something attached to this. This is only achievable through lifestyle modification, and the non-thermal comfort zones is one of the most profound methods in our armamentarium. Now, there are supplements that activate detoxification. There are liver support. I mean, you know, we can talk about this till cows come home, or I can talk about this till cows come home. But bottom line is, today we're just concentrating on the hot and cold. So how practically apply heat? That I cannot really easily describe because that is individual. If your body is super sensitive and you need to gradually build up, you really have to start very slow and increase. But even not being afraid in a hot weather, being outdoors and sweat out, obviously with a good hydration and being careful, has its own benefit. However, I personally believe that everybody should experience periodic saunas. The question is, how do you do this? I can't really go there well, because again, the process getting there is not standardized versus actually how to get to the being able to tolerate colds is pretty standardized, and we'll talk about that next. If you want to ask me a more practical question, look, well, how do I get from point A to point B? Like, I never experienced sauna, now how do I get there? Well, you could always start with very brief exposures at any sauna that's available for you, whether you go to gym now that as we gonna open up and do more things, or if you have a friend, or if you have your own, or your friend has an infrared sauna in the house, which usually my main suggestion. The reason infrared is it's just more practical. You can easily put the sauna in your house. It's easy installation. It doesn't draw a lot of electricity. It's just one-time investment, and then usually those devices good for decades. Plus, they increase the value of the house. So I'm probably going to stop right now here and take questions regarding that, if there are any. Oh, there's a question about protein. They're called heat shock proteins. There's a whole series of them. Sometimes they just call HSPs for short. And every animal and humans, all organisms that have cellular function, that have mitochondria, will have them. Actually, funny that I'm mentioning this. This goes back to me 20, how old am I? All right, 25 years ago. I worked in a lab that studied HSP. It's kind of funny that in fact, if you guys Google my name, I have my only super high journal publication was on this exact topic. When I was pre-medical, it was I did one experiment that was super important for that research, and I got published in Nature. You know, so I did nothing I didn't write a word for that study, but I did the key experiment that took me 10 minutes. But bottom line is, this is a very highly researched topic because of how profound impact of HSPs on the cellular function is. Right, so biomat would work for heat. Pretty much anything that makes your body temperature go up somewhere I'm talking about the temperature should be somewhere at least at 115, 120 and above. Now, in a dry sauna, the heat can be intense. I mean, we can be talking 180, 190. I'm not saying you got to get there. I'm saying that your body temperature has to go up significantly. Now, here's really important. You can ask me, well, I love my jacuzzi. No, that's not going to work. Your body has to sweat. When we're sweating, that's when the heat shock protein activated. If the temperature is removed through the layer of water, it's going to do nothing, or the impact is going to be too minimal to really have benefits. So if you love your jacuzzi and you feel relaxed, then it's great for you. A lot of this is more of a nervous system impact because the warmth opens up the pores in a way. You can absorb minerals better if you're doing Epsom salts baths, don't stop it. It's great, but it's a different principle. You're not doing a sweating detox, so to speak. Okay. Of course, the sweat itself is quite critical, right? When we sweat, we tend to remove the toxins because look, this is a lot of skin surface, right? So if you sweat it out and you remove all those toxins, that's also a very underutilized area of the detoxification. But I wanted to bring up heat shock proteins because I actually don't often discuss this because face to face with patients, that doesn't come up every day. It's a less common topic. Okay. Can you do sauna if you have hypertension? Remember, this is when I said that you got to the heat exposure is individual. So here I would say you have to be very careful and you got to talk to me individually outside of today because it's not something I can easily explain how to do. Yes, so you could run into issues. Also, if anybody have heart problems, you also have to be quite careful. If you have open wounds, you have to be careful. If you have any vascular problems, you have to be careful. So it doesn't mean you cannot do it, but you just have to be very gradual and very strategic about it. Okay. So don't, after this talk, please nobody runs into the sauna for an hour and then I get a call that you passed out there. No, I don't want to hear that. Okay. All right. With that, I don't see any more questions. So let me switch back to our crazy man, Wim Hof. So I highly recommend you to visit this website. So I'm going to put this in the chat so everybody can see this. So what is this? So the idea that low temperatures are critical for resiliency, for balance of nervous system, for improvement of immune function has been around forever. If you go back and you look historically at some of the cultures, specifically cultures that lived in the north, pretty much all of them had some kind of ceremony around the kind of extreme cold exposure. The reason they were involved with that is twofold. Obviously, if you live in the north, you have to anticipate that periodically you're going to be in situations where you're going to be exposed to extreme heat, no matter how extreme cold, no matter how you try to protect yourself, right? So they evolved training programs that would make you to increase your chances of survival. So this was practical reason. But what came out of that eventually, after doing this for a long time, people start noticing dramatic benefits. And the reason I brought up Wim Hof is because he's really the first person who popularized the idea of dramatic shifts in health based on his own life. So this guy was in suicidal depression after his wife left. He was a janitor somewhere in Europe. I think he's Dutch, if I'm not mistaken. If anybody knows better, please correct me, feel free. And he always liked swimming, and for some reason he just started swimming in a cold water. Turned out that he was really good at that, and at the same time he was studying some of the Tibetan breathing techniques, and I guess he basically put two things together. He took what's called the Tibetan fire breath, even though he doesn't call it that way, and he's been critiqued for not giving appropriate credit to the sort of the source of his knowledge. He basically took the fire breath, Tibetan fire breath, which dramatically enhances body's capacity to tolerate cold, combined it with the extreme cold exposure, and basically became super famous. So if you just Google him, he beat all the extreme cold exposure world records. He's in a Guinness book. Basically, he had every body monitored in Times Square for an hour and a half. He was sitting in an ice bath without dropping a core temperature by a single degree. So it's possible. We would think it's insane, and I used to think it's insane. I used to hate cold with a passion until I kind of stumbled upon his work. And since then, which is about 6 or 7 years ago now, I started doing the cold training, and I'll tell you, my health dramatically improved. What really improved the most is my frequent capacity of having cold hands and kind of, I walk outside and my hands starting hurt, my fingers, because it's cold. So all that is gone. I feel like I can tolerate any kind of extreme temperatures, but more importantly, I think what mainly switched, I still used to I was getting sick 2 or 3 times a year. I have not been sick in years now at this point in that way, the way I was getting sick. So there's definitely dramatic immune upregulation that happens. So since Wim Hof, because somebody had to explain what was happening to him, the science made a very interesting discovery. Back in the day, we used to believe that brown fat, which is what kids have, and that's why they run around naked in whatever the temperature, including my own kids. I've seen it with my own eyes, it's real. So until around age 5 or 6, they naturally have the brown fat reserve. After that, that reserve starts to gradually disappear, and by age about 10, everybody loses this capacity. Turns out we lose capacity, but we don't lose capacity. We lose the brown fat, but we don't lose capacity to regenerate it. So it turned out 3 minutes of a cold exposure up to the knees will generate brown fat in about 4 weeks. And it will increase generating to the point where you will have all your regular fat replaced with brown fat if you're persistent, meaning people lose dramatic amount of weight. All of that metabolically inactive white fat can get replaced with brown fat, which means that your metabolism is going to rev up dramatically because brown fat is highly metabolically active. Another critical aspect of brown fat, it's thought to be a longevity factor. So the reason I'm doing cold exposure at this point, because there's very clear literature that if you expose animals, especially lower kingdom animals like worms, to extreme cold, you can expand life by 10-fold in worms. Now, of course, that doesn't going to translate that we can do that in humans, but there's a belief that in the higher animals, there will be a longevity impact of cold exposure. Nobody knows exactly how long, but there are several studies underway. I personally intuitively feel in the long run, it's going to be one of the most important longevity factors we can do to ourselves. So why I believe that? Because the current literature on the brown fat points to that direction. So when somebody took, when the researchers took people with a high percent brown fat, those are the old people who live over 100. So when they went back and they looked at the people surviving beyond 100 years old, the chances of them having high brown fat is something like 10-fold higher than somebody else who does not. So there is a belief that brown fat is critical. There's a belief that since it's really the only way I can think of that's practically relevant, easy, and simple that can do it, that is probably in the future going to be something important. I mentioned the immune upregulation. That's the only proven cold exposure thing as of now, as I'm aware. Meaning that there's a very clear data that not only viral infections go down, but you literally increase your cellular immunity. So they have analyzed cells, and it's very rapid. So after 1 week of practicing cold exposure, you have dramatic upregulation of immune cells. So practical issues, right? So enough of me blubbering about all this. You probably feel that I think it's an important point. I think I delivered that message already enough. How do you do this? You start with contrast shower. So you start with at the end of your regular shower, once you've finished, you basically rotate the knob to cold and warm for about 30 seconds each time, 2 or 3 rounds. Start with lukewarm. Don't go straight to cold, because you're gonna stand there and think, what the hell is he doing to me? I hate him. I hate him. I don't want that. I want you to feel okay. So lukewarm, gradually progress. Once you get to the real cold, that's where the magic begins. Eventually, you want to move completely just to 2-3 minutes cold exposure. Don't underestimate shower. People always tell me, well, but Wim Hof always does ice water. Well, it's a summer. It's 90 degrees outside. Where are you gonna? I mean, sure, if you have unlimited resources, go buy a bunch of ice and stick it in your tub. It's not very practical, is it? So cold shower, even in the middle of the summer, gets you to about 55 degrees. It's cold enough to maintain production of the brown fats that are generated. In the winter, that temperature is going to be closer to 50 degrees. That's okay. That's enough. Now, if you do have capacity in the winter, which is what I do, I have friends who brought up a tub. Now I have an actual tub outside that in the winter will be filled, and I'll be going in there. But in the summer, I just do a shower, just a cold shower. Okay, I'm running out of time. I see that Angela is here. Better half, as Janet said. So I'm gonna take a couple more questions. And one thing I want to show you. They do have a Wim Hof website has a free class. Feel free to take it. I'm gonna put the link into the chat. I do want to tell you that in Wim Hof's techniques, the breathing is essential. I partially agree with that. Breathing is very important, but frankly, even if you just do the cold exposure, you're going to have a benefit. The breathing helps. Why? Because the breathing helps body to tolerate the shock. Shock will always be there. I've been doing this for 6 years. I'm telling you, I'm not liking going into cold water, but it gets easier. You just don't have this immediate body reaction jumping out of there, right? So you just eventually get used to it. But that shock of a coldness is all, I mean, we're human beings, right? I mean, we're not supposed to, it's a threat potential, right? But your body gets used to be okay with that threat. And that's actually another psychological point, right? I mean, it's good for us, and Angela can talk, and she's an expert on this. She can talk about the fact that it's often important for us to conquer internal fears of things that are scary for us because they are associated with some kind of trauma. And those of us who grew up in the North quite well aware of a possibility of trauma or cold exposure. So I just want to bring that up. In the winter, how long in a cold lake and how? Okay, so it's good that there's a reason why I decided to talk about this in the dead of a summer, right? So that nobody is doing in a crazy experiment after the class is finished, running outside in the lake, cutting the hole in the ice and jumping in, right? So I don't want to. So 2 or 3 minutes is plenty. Wim Hof advocates to get up to 10 minutes. I do highly disagree with that. I think there's no point, and that beyond 5 minutes, you're really starting to run high risk of all kinds of problems. Of course, if you're in a very cold environment, your body is not adapted, you will have major negative consequences. So you have to be very careful. You have to be very strategic. Class does talk about it, so we don't have time for me to go into details. But 2-3 minutes, and again, gradually move there. And I will quiz everybody in 2 weeks. Remember, we don't have next week's class. With that, I don't see any more questions. How long you need to stay in a heat sweat mode? Again, Judy, that is variable. Generally, for most people, I would say 15 to 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. That's generally an acceptable frequency. But again, it would need to be pretty individual. Let's do one last question. We're right at 2:30. In shower, cold, hot, alternating, do you end in the cold? Thank you. I forgot. You end in the cold because that's the whole point, right? You want to walk out there with the body still feeling the cold exposure. How deep to submerge? Most of the body needs to be submerged. When you're doing the shower, whatever, right? It depends on your shower head. But if you go into the actual reservoir of a cold water, let's say you have let me give you a simple example. Let's say you're on a well water. The advantage of well water, it's always same temperature, right? It's always about 52 degrees. It's always a good cold temperature. So you can fill up the tub if you want, and you just go in, you go in whatever's comfortable, usually just by the neck. If the cold water gets in the back of your neck, that's where the receptors for temperature is. So your heart rate will slow down, will plummet instantly down by 20, 30 points. You may feel a little dizzy and lightheaded. This is one of the key warnings. So in the beginning, never get submerged below the neck, under the neck. Once you get very comfortable, you can go full head under the water, but in the beginning, don't do it. And if you put the shower on the neck, it won't be the same effect because the water is still dispersed, right? So you're not going to probably have as powerful of the drop of the heart rate. If you don't need to lose weight, what are the other benefits of, well, so you're dramatically upregulating your immune system, but more importantly, you're upregulating mitochondrial function with the brown fat. So you're basically capable of not only handling any stressors better, but you're handling toxicity better because obviously better mitochondria means less toxins. You basically handling everything better, less fatigue, less brain fog, better sleep, etc. So the whole body machinery, metabolic machinery improves because of that. All right, thank you. That was last question. I see that Angela is here, and welcome, Angela. And you let us know if you need anything. You're currently muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Can you hear any background noises?
I think it's pretty good.
Okay.
We don't hear noodles, if that's what you ask.
Well, but my pop is chewing on the bone because I just got home and he's very happy and reactive. So hi friends. Let me actually take me from seeing myself. I don't really need that. Okay. Really happy to be here. I did not have much time to really get ready, but I think I have something because I've been thinking about how it's gonna be when I come next time, which is in August. So I've been inventing some things in my head that I can do, something exciting for us, new. So yeah, and as a part of what I was going to do, I needed some example of like a really, really mild stressful situation, like a threat. And Dr. Kogan just generously provided working material. So, but anyway, let's begin our, so I'm gonna dwell a little bit, not into acupuncture or Chinese medicine, but into somatic experiencing. And it's gonna be a bit of an exploration rather than, just relaxation practice. So it'll be a mixture. Because as Misha mentioned, it's really important for us not to just know how to relax, but also know how to go back and forth between different states of nervous system to increase our capacity so we can do well in any situation that happens in our life. And just that's what we call regulation of nervous system. And we can self-regulate and we can use all the help in order to do that. So let's begin our exploration with just finding where we are at the moment. And a very simple question, how know you are here? So just gently ask yourself, like, how do you know you're here? What do you experience right now? And we can be, in our head first. We can have some emotional emotional states, experience emotional states. No, but eventually we also want to feel our body, where we are, and how we know we are here. So just invite yourself to sense that. And then just make sure you're comfortable, you're sitting in a comfortable position. And first, kind of gently close your eyes, but then open them and let them really wander where they want to be, when they would just look around the room where you are. And then just go back to kind of center. If you're looking at the screen, don't close your eyes yet. You can just relax them though. And then sense your body again and find like a part of the body that feels the most solid, maybe right now, the most present, the most reliable, sort of an anchor. No, sorry, you're not coming here. It could be legs. Oftentimes, it's very common to feel legs or sit bones, or maybe a lower belly. Or it could be anything, really. So just make a contact with that. Just recognize that. Just maybe that could be just feeling your legs full and present. And then we begin. So just remember that we can use as a resource. We can go back to that if we need to. So, and we're going to travel to the 3 situation. I'm going to give you a 3 situation, like something you can just quickly imagine, something actually relatively common. So what I invite you to do, as soon as I describe the situation and you can think of one, try to recognize what's your first sense in the body. Usually it comes first because, our nervous system is there for us. And something that oftentimes we don't pay attention to. We kind of start to think, pay attention to our thoughts or what we need to do. But let's really pay attention to that first reaction in our body or response. Not reaction in that sense, response. What happens? Like, what's the first like move you feel? It could be anywhere, it could be anything. All we need is to just recognize that. So the first situation what we gonna imagine or think about would be something mildly uncomforting or stressful. Let's say a doctor tells you need to take a cold shower every day, or maybe somebody's calling you and there is no identification in the number, and on the phone you don't know who that is, or somebody's calling the door maybe after 8 a.m. and maybe you think like you left your lights in the car, something like that. Just think of one and sense it. So that's probably, relatively quick to do because we're looking for that immediate response of the body. So maybe you were able to do that, maybe not. You can do it later anytime by yourself. It's not something that you can't do by yourself. So, and now let's go back to the part of the body that feels like an anchor, or just sense your legs and arms. Take a breath. And now imagine the second type of situation when Let's say you have a good amount of time for lunch. You just managed to make yourself really delicious lunch that's good for you. And you're sitting at a table, you have time, you have your nutrition, and you maybe even like playing a nice piece of music, or maybe you invited your friend to join in and having a little nice chat, something really pleasant. And so sense in the body how that feels. Maybe just pick on one thing or two, doesn't matter. And don't hold your breath, just keep breathing. So just dwell for a moment in that state. And just let it go, going back to your anchor, part of the body that's most solid and present. It could be the same part of the body, by the way, where you felt something. That's all right. And if you didn't feel, if you're not able to feel that, that's all right too. Sometimes it's not easy to make that awareness, working, being available all the time. But so then there's the third type of situation that I invite you to explore. Also, just noticing what's the response in the body, where and what is like. Just imagine like you're really, really tired. And it's not a bad thing. Maybe you're just really tired after a day full of good work done. Just like really, really tired, and your body it just wants to sleep, just want to crash, and you got your bed and just have this opportunity to just go to bed and rest. Or maybe it's not even late at night. Maybe it's in the middle of the day. You just were walking like a hike, and then you sat somewhere in the shade. You laid down, and you just let completely relax your body. Let your body completely relax. And your mind totally not there. Also, in a nice shade. No thoughts. Okay. Sensing your body. And letting it go and go back to your solid body part. And just again, sensing you're here. How you know you're here. Taking a little deeper breath. Just maybe a couple. And I allow you to think about your lunch again, or nice sunny spot in the garden with flowers and your best friend again, and you don't have to let it go anymore. Okay, so okay, maybe you can let your eyes again wander around and just notice things around. There's a couple of spots you can just look at your periphery. Kind of like a little eye stretch, so to speak, and then just center again. So what happened, we basically traveled from one state of nervous system to another and yet another. And so first was sympathetic reaction, right? The second was one state of vagus nerve parasympathetic reaction activation that we called dorsal, which is kind of feeling relaxed but engaged, kind of relaxed but active. And the third one is kind of deep relaxation. Of course, I don't think we really felt that in this short amount of time, but just a hint of that. So that was another vagus nerve state that we call dorsal vagal. So these three states are basically what polyvagal theory works with, and in somatic experiencing, we work with that. So if you imagine a traffic light, instead of green, yellow, and red, red, yellow, and green, let's imagine red, green, and blue. So that's how that works. So first one was red, a little bit of a threat or unknown situation. It could be sometimes a lot of excitement, you know, like when we're super excited, we feel kind of the same. I don't know what everybody felt, but it's sometimes interesting. Anxiety could feel like an excitement, the same type of butterflies in the stomach, like a little unsettled. So it's a sympathetic reaction. It employs like similar neurotransmitters and everything. So then second, we have it green here in our model now. That's when we are relaxed but engaged. No threat, but we're active. We just here and out. We can pay attention to things. We can create. We can work. You know, apparently, you know, great state to be in. And we want to expand that as much as we can. And then we have blue. I call it blue because it's just deep relaxation. And it could be what we have in the deep sleep or nidra yoga or even shavasana sometimes. So the whole idea of going, it's not just about relaxation in life. We have red and we have to have red because we, you know, always going to have these situations. So going back and forth from one to other is really, really important. That's what coherence means. And by doing a lot of different exercises, from cold water shower to yoga to breathing meditations, whatever, we're just increasing our nervous system capacity to really go from one state to another quickly and have a capacity to do that. And going smoothly without being stuck in one state. Because what happens is we get overwhelmed with a stressful situation, we can get stuck, and when our body also, you know, invents different defenses. Like people sometimes dissociate, which is being really, really stuck in blue, or being depressed, just kind of too much. I want to just be in rest because that feels the safest. Or feeling on, you know, always stressed, always anxious because everything seems to be sort of being stuck in red, right? So I guess like you got an idea from this exercise that it's not just relaxing that's very helpful to self-regulate, but also create the situations when we really can train our nervous system, kind of like almost like the muscle, to go back and forth. So to go a little bit into activation of some sympathetic nervous system, just imagining this type of situations, or then eventually being in them and reminding us, oh, I know how to go there, from there into my solid part, or maybe into green zone. And then eventually grow muscle, and then eventually grow capacity. And then we can just live our lives. So that's what I wanted to share. I hear that somebody had difficulty hearing, so I'm really sorry about that. Maybe it was my voice too, not loud enough. I don't have a mic because I actually.
I think that extra sounds were a noodle's bone. That's what I think. But it got better.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. And yeah, I didn't really have time to get ready technically.
Well, thank you, Angela, so much. We do have a few minutes, so we
we can take more questions. And I had this idea also, if so we're talking about the vagus nerve, and I know there's a lot of people here who have lots of experience and lots of knowledge about how to regulate, how to train vagus nerve. If you feel like, you can share in the chat your favorite exercise for vagus nerve, because there are a lot, like yawning, cold shower, humming, chanting, and on and on and on. So, and then maybe we could, we could save it and share.
You can unmute yourself if you'd like to share what your favorite vagus nerve exercise is.
Maybe to have some sense of order, maybe people can raise hands. Do you guys know how to do that? All right, I'm not hearing any response to that. So, okay.
Stretching would be definitely one, yes.
Yeah, let's just use the chat box. I'm afraid if we're gonna have everybody on mute, it's gonna get a little noisy.
Exercise in general is very supportive, but it depends, because there are different types of exercise, but stretching would be great for everyone. That's why we want to do it when we're, we want to shift something, when we feel stuck.
Yeah, singing and drumming, very good point. So rhythmical sound generation of any kind can be very regulatory.
Sorry about my pet chewing on the bone, but chewing on the bone is very soothing for him, and having a pet is very good for me. Not the sound, but I'll work on this next time.
Luann, what's your personal favorite soothing technique or vagal regulatory technique for you? And what do you think in terms of your kind of, since you're really probably the most experienced person on a call for other people?
So first of all, Angela, I really like this exercise. I think this was one of the best you've done, and I look forward to you doing more of this with us. But what I really thought of is I dance 4 times a week in the morning. I get up, I'm not a morning person, but I force myself to get up and go to my dance class, which we did on Zoom all during the sequestration, the quarantine that we were in, which was great. But once we're back in the studio now, I just get so happy, and I just feel like my whole system gets a reset and regulation. So my go-to really is to put on some music and dance around for 3 or 4 minutes when I'm feeling nervous or upset by something. That works for me. So I do a lot of other practices because different people have different responses of what works for them. So a lot of breathing techniques, stretching, moving. But for me personally, it's dancing. Always has been since I was, as long as I can remember, since I was a little kid. Thank you.
Somebody is saying, placing your, Judy, placing your thumbs on the third eye area and then making the sound, which is very soothing. I just want to say one more quick thing. When I say soothing, when we talk about soothing, it's not exactly relaxing. Soothing is feeling safe, in making you feel safe, but not like out, very present. So yeah, it's more like getting into that green color, not necessarily blue. It could be mixed, a little bit between.
Well, it looks like we're running out of time now. I would like to thank both Kogans, but a special thank you to Angela, because literally an hour and a half ago, we did not have somebody to do the mind body. Misha was going to pitch in, but Angela came through for us. She was able to drive from where she was back home. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay.
My pleasure.
Everybody have a beautiful weekend. The weather is wonderful here in the DMV. So go out and enjoy it. Bye.
Before we turn off, so next week we decided we're gonna have, because it's 4th of July, so we're skipping on next Friday. So we'll see everybody in 2 weeks, which would be, I believe, July 9th. Am I correct?
And all this information will be in the email.
Correct.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.